Okay, so remember how I told you guys that I would see you in 2 weeks unless something actually crazy happens? Well, something crazy happened. So you guys are getting this one a week early. Yaoi News Network number 4, emergency meeting. That's in Among Us. First, let us address the elephant in the room. Trump kidnaps Maduro! So the night of January 2nd to the morning of January 3rd, Trump sent his team into Venezuela where they kidnapped Maduro. And Trump, in his press conference the following day, kept talking about how this was the best operation they ever performed. And then as evidence, he posts these pictures of himself and Rubio in them where they did strategy planning. And as we can see on the screen, it was very strategic. But that's besides the point, because this was Trump's reasoning for capturing Maduro.
Maduro was the kingpin of a vast criminal network responsible for trafficking drugs into the United States.
His main argument was that Maduro was sending drugs into the United States, right? Which we already know, and I've already said, is kind of weird, because he pardoned Honduran President Juan Hernandez for the exact same thing.
That man was persecuted and treated very badly. That's why I gave him a pardon.
So why would he pardon Hernandez but kidnap Maduro? Because Trump wants to oil up! He claims that Maduro stole his oil, and so he needs the oil back, but we have to look at the nuance of the Yaoi relationships. Before Maduro got kidnapped, he was sending oil to Xi and Putin. He was oiling up 2 of Trump's biggest harem members. And Trump is a yandere. He's the jealous obsessive type. So he doesn't want Maduro to oil up his routes. He wants to oil up his routes.
In terms of China and Russia, we're in the oil business. We're going to sell it to them.
And that's why he keeps saying the U.S. is going to run Venezuela.
So we are going to run the country.
He doesn't want to only run Venezuela. He wants to run the oil all over his body. Now, because Trump is going for the oiling up route, I don't think that Trump is going for Maduro's route. I know that a lot of people think that Trump kidnapped Maduro because he likes Maduro, but I don't think that is the case. We have seen his other Yaoi routes where he never kidnaps them, even though he is a yandere. So it begs the question, why did he kidnap Maduro this time? Now, is it impossible that Trump would eventually take the Maduro route? No! If you think about it, this could turn into a Stockholm Syndrome imprisoned yandere Yaoi relationship, which is the most toxic one of them all! That would explain why Maduro changed his outfits 3 times. However, do I think that there's a high possibility for this route? No, because the kidnapping of Maduro was a necessary condition for the oil up limited time event. And Trump says in the press conference that during his talks with Maduro, Maduro refused to surrender.
I was with him and I said, you got to surrender. And I actually thought he was pretty close to doing so, but now he wished he did, yeah.
So never say never, but for now, let's say probably not. Now, after going to trial in New York, Maduro pleads not guilty, and he claims that he was kidnapped so that this trial cannot stand. This is the extent of my knowledge on the court case so far, so we will have to wait until March 17th. 2 months, because that's when the next court case will be. And now that we know how Trump and Maduro feel, let's examine what everybody else says, because everybody else has a whole lot to say. And generally, the consensus is that all of these countries condemn Trump's actions. So there's Iran, this is Khamenei. There's also Lula from Brazil. There's Mexico, which is Sheinbaum. There's Colombia, which is Petro. And France, which is Macron. Now, these are obviously not the only ones. There's also Milei, who actually supported Trump and said, long live freedom. However, I think you get the idea. Kidnapping Maduro not only kickstarted the oil up limited time event, but also triggered an international conflict flag for the entire harem route. So by doing this and upsetting so many routes, Trump might have thrown away his opportunity to ever have a harem in the first place. But Trump did not seem to care, because after kidnapping Maduro, he started tweaking, saying things to imply that certain countries are next. For example, Colombia.
Gustavo Petro, a couple weeks ago, he said he's got to watch his ass.
And yeah, I think I stick by my first statement. He's making cocaine, they're sending it into the United States, so he does have to watch his ass.
He threatens Petro! And then Cuba!
Cuba is going to be something we'll end up talking about. It's very similar.
Then he starts threatening Mexico.
And by the way, you have to do something with Mexico. Mexico has to get their act together because.
And finally, the press asks him about Greenland, which at first he doesn't want to talk about.
I don't want to talk about Greenland.
But then, for some reason, he talks about it anyways.
I just say this. We need Greenland from the standpoint of national security. And the European Union needs us to have it, and they know that.
Which prompts a bunch of countries in NATO to release a joint statement. Merz, Macron, Meloni, Tusk, Sanchez, Starmer, and Frederickson. Almost all of the EU routes came out to tell Trump that Greenland belongs to Denmark, aka Frederickson. But Trump really wants Greenland, and he thinks that eventually they will end up giving Greenland to him. Why? I don't know. But that is obviously the audacity of a dating sim haramer. Now, you might be saying, Lumie, this is a lot of different routes, but I feel like we're missing one of the important routes in the EU. And you're right. That's because I saved one person for last. Zelensky. Zelensky said this.
Про Венесуелу? Що можна, так, з диктаторами, ось так, то Сполучені Штати Америки знають, що їм робити далі.
Basically implying that Trump should kidnap Putin next because he's realizing how unfair it is that Trump is using his yandere characteristics on somebody like Maduro just to oil up with Xi and Putin when really he could be using those characteristics on Putin to keep Zelensky safe. And it's making him feel left out because he's not even invited to the oil up party. But Trump might not be shelving Zelensky's route completely because during his gaggle with the press, he said this about Zelensky.
You said that you were really very angry with the Ukrainian President Zelensky if he was the one who conducted that strike on Putin's residence.
I don't believe that strike happened.
That he didn't believe the attack on Putin's house actually happened, even though he was on a sleep call with Putin after the attack. So it's obvious that he's flipping between that love triangle because he wants both of them. And you might think that since Trump is so desperate to oil up Putin and Xi, they would be happy with this because they would want to be oiled up with him, right? Wrong! Putin and Xi got really mad. Both condemned Trump's actions and continue to condemn it now. Their foreign ministers basically said that Trump is doing something not consensual and he's trying to force his haramis to love him and oil up with him even though they don't want to. But Trump still has not responded to any of the haramis. In fact, it's completely possible that even just the thought of oiling up with Putin and Xi got him so excited that his omega instincts that he tries so hard to repress by pretending to be an alpha, they came out. Because yesterday he did this.
I want to really, yeah. Once he gets it, and drops the thing.
But with all of these things happening following the kidnapping of Maduro by yandere Trump, there is still no resolution. Hi everybody, it's me! Editing Lumie! I know that as I'm editing this, a ton of new stuff has come out, but we will put it in the next one. Now time for the map. Okay? I know it looks crazy. To make this easy, we're gonna first look at the new routes. So first of all, we have Frederickson, the PM of Denmark. Frederickson is friends with Meloni and Merz, Rutte and Stubb and Macron and von der Leyen. So when Trump said that thing about Greenland, aka about Frederickson, caused a chain reaction because they backed her up. And we'll get to that in a second. Delcy Rodriguez. This is who Trump has been speaking to in place of Maduro as the leader of Venezuela. Trump has said that he is on good talking terms with Rodriguez. But the problem with assigning a key color to a route is that Trump has yet to meet her, and we don't even have solid proof that he has even talked to her on the phone. So for now, until the next video comes out, this will be to be determined. And the same goes for Sheinbaum, because again, Trump does stuff like praise Sheinbaum, but he also vaguely threatens Mexico. Okay, next. President of Cuba, Miguel Diaz-Canel. Same thing as the others, it's a TBD route. Trump has said some stuff about Cuba, but we have not seen Trump meet or speak of Diaz-Canel by name. Now finally, our last new route. President of Colombia, Gustavo Petro. And you know that Trump has said some crazy stuff about Petro. He cursed at him, which is pretty insane. So you might be wondering, Lumie, why is this a hate/TBD and not a full hate? This is because we have yet to see Petro's response. And obviously all of these routes are also in a mutual TBD because I think it's a little too early to call it. So now that we've completed all of the new routes, let's talk about how the old routes changed. Obviously, the kidnapping did not change anything. This line between Maduro and Trump remains hate to hate, although it is not an impossibility that Maduro, like I was saying earlier, develops Stockholm Syndrome. So for now, we will put a question mark of love next to this line. Not impossible, but very improbable. Now, reconfirming the Zelensky-Putin love triangle, obviously Putin and Trump are still complicated. Obviously, Zelensky is still complicated to Trump. Obviously, Trump somewhat loves Zelensky. However, there is still a question mark of hate because Zelensky might be mad at Trump for not taking care of Putin. One of Trump's big routes that does change is the Xi Jinping route. Trump still loves Xi Jinping, and we can tell in his desperation to get him to oil up with him. However, Xi Jinping and Trump are now complicated. And this is a common theme in all of today's updated routes, because the same thing happened with Macron, since Macron is friends with Frederickson. And the same thing happens with all of Frederickson's friends. So as you can see now, all of these EU routes, which used to be love or at least neutral, are now complicated. Everybody knows that in any dating sim ever, having to crawl your way back into a route's love meter is hard. So if Trump carries on ruining these routes like this, soon he will have no international routes left. And with that, I give you the updated map. Now back to non-editing Lumie. But besides that, we end this emergency meeting on a cliffhanger. So now, I'm going to say this one more time. I will see you guys in 2 weeks. Unless something crazy happens. Yeah, no, I'll probably see you guys next week. So, bye, Lewis!